What would you do if a single, humiliating moment shattered your sense of dignity and self-worth? This question lingers in the air like a dark cloud, casting shadows over the lives of many who have faced similar indignities. In a world where the color of one's skin or the clothes one wears can dictate the level of respect afforded to them, the story of Marcus Taylor unfurls, a narrative that is as poignant as it is timely. Marcus is a man in his 50s, a hard worker, and a devoted friend. For over a decade, he has been the trusted driver for country music star Alan Jackson, navigating the winding roads of both Nashville and their intertwined lives. Marcus is tall, with broad shoulders that seem to carry the weight of responsibility, not just for himself, but for the countless others who look to him as a figure of strength. He possesses an easy smile that belies the struggles beneath the surface, a smile that has often served as a shield against the harsh realities of the world around him. Growing up in a small town in Tennessee, Marcus learned early on the value of hard work and loyalty. He watched his mother toil tirelessly to provide for their family, instilling in him the virtues of perseverance and integrity. Yet despite his dreams of a better life, the societal constraints and prejudices he encountered often left him feeling like an outsider, a mere shadow in a world where he longed to be seen. His aspirations are simple yet profound: to be respected, to provide for his family, and to leave a legacy that speaks to the character of a man who has faced adversity with grace. On a particularly busy week, leading up to a televised charity performance, Alan entrusts Marcus with a seemingly mundane task: visiting the local bank to deposit checks, verify some business paperwork, and retrieve an important document Alan had forgotten to sign. But what should have been a routine errand quickly descends into a nightmare. As Marcus walks into the upscale downtown bank, he is dressed in modest work attire, but the cold glances from the staff pierce through him like arrows. The polished marble floors and gleaming glass walls feel more like a prison than a sanctuary. As he approaches the counter, his heart racing with the weight of expectation, the moment he utters his purpose for being there, the bank manager's demeanor shifts, skepticism morphs into hostility, and questions arise that cut deep. Are you sure you're here for the right reasons? The implications hang heavy in the air, and Marcus feels the sting of humiliation wash over him. He stands there calm but dejected, battling the internal storm of emotions brewing within. As he quietly walks out of the bank, the whispers of doubt echo in his mind, and he cannot shake the feeling that he has been reduced to a mere caricature of himself, a man defined by the color of his skin rather than the character he embodies. Unbeknownst to Marcus, another customer has filmed the entire interaction, capturing the raw moment when dignity was stripped away. That evening, as he recounts the incident to Alan, the hurt and vulnerability in his voice resonate deeply with the country star. Alan, a man known for his compassion and commitment to social issues, feels his blood boil, not just as a public figure but as a true friend. The conflict within him is palpable. Should he go public and risk further humiliation for Marcus, or should he remain silent? The moral dilemma weighs heavily on his heart, but the answer emerges in a flash of clarity. In a bold and unprecedented move, Alan decides to address the situation live on air during the charity performance. The cameras roll, capturing not just the glitz and glamour of the event, but the raw emotion that pulses through the audience. He stands before thousands, his voice steady but filled with passion, as he recounts Marcus's experience without naming the bank, emphasizing the larger societal issues that have perpetuated such injustices. In that moment, he becomes a voice for the voiceless, challenging the status quo and inviting everyone to reflect on their own biases. As the crowd absorbs the weight of his words, Alan invites Marcus onto the stage, an act that transforms the atmosphere from one of despair to one of empowerment. The silence that follows is palpable, a collective breath held in anticipation. When Marcus speaks, his voice trembles with emotion, but his words resonate with strength. He shares not just his story, but the stories of countless others who have faced similar humiliations in silence. It is a moment of catharsis, not just for him, but for everyone who has ever felt marginalized or unheard. The fallout from that night is nothing short of explosive. The video of their interaction spreads like wildfire across social media, igniting discussions about race, dignity, and respect. The bank, faced with the public outcry, issues a formal apology. But Alan knows that this moment is about more than just a statement. It's about igniting change. He shifts the focus to a new initiative aimed at funding financial literacy programs for working-class communities, addressing the systemic issues that have long plagued those who have been marginalized. As the narrative unfolds, Marcus finds himself on a journey of healing and empowerment. He begins sharing his story with local youth groups, transforming his pain into a source of strength and inspiration for others. Alan joins him in this mission, visiting schools and communities to foster conversations around dignity and respect. Together, they become a symbol of resilience, a reminder that strength comes in many forms, and sometimes the quietest voice in the room holds the most profound wisdom. In a world often divided by prejudice and misunderstanding, the bond between Marcus and Alan stands as a beacon of hope. Their journey illustrates the power of friendship, solidarity, and the importance of standing up against injustice. As they navigate the complexities of their lives, they remind us that every story has the potential to spark change, and that true strength is often found in vulnerability. Through their shared experience, they challenge us to reflect on our own beliefs and biases, igniting a movement that transcends their individual circumstances and resonates with the heart of society. The days following the charity performance felt like a whirlwind for Marcus. The initial euphoria of being embraced by a crowd that recognized his pain was quickly overshadowed by a torrent of emotions. News outlets clamored for interviews. Social media exploded with both support and vitriol, and Marcus found himself thrust into a spotlight he had never sought. The weight of it all pressed down on him, threatening to suffocate the very essence of who he was. Each morning, he awoke with a gnawing anxiety in his stomach, a reminder of the humiliation he had endured at the bank. The echoes of the manager's condescending tone played on repeat in his mind, amplifying his fears that the world would never truly see him as more than a stereotype. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages, some encouraging, while others were cloaked in ignorance and racism. The latter stung the most, and he struggled to come to terms with the fact that, despite his achievements and his friendship with Alan, there were those who would always define him by the color of his skin rather than the content of his character. In the midst of this chaos, Marcus received an unexpected phone call from a childhood friend, Tanya, who had heard about the incident. Tanya had always been a steadfast presence in his life, a kindred spirit who understood the struggles of growing up in a world that often judged based on appearances. She was now a community organizer in Nashville, tirelessly working to uplift marginalized voices. When she invited him to speak at an upcoming community event, Marcus hesitated. The thought of public speaking sent a wave of panic through him. What could he possibly contribute? He was still grappling with his own feelings of inadequacy. "Marcus, your story matters," Tanya urged him gently. "You have the power to inspire change. You've been through something that so many others can relate to. Don't let fear silence you." As their conversation continued, Marcus felt the flickering flame of determination reignite within him. Perhaps this was an opportunity to not only reclaim his voice, but to also help others who had suffered similar indignities. It was a chance to channel his pain into purpose. With a deep breath, he accepted Tanya's invitation, though the butterflies in his stomach danced wildly at the thought of standing before a crowd. In the days leading up to the event, Marcus wrestled with self-doubt. He confided in Alan about his fears, expressing concerns that sharing his story would only deepen his vulnerability. Alan listened intently, his expression a mix of understanding and encouragement. Marcus, vulnerability doesn't make you weak, it makes you strong. You're not just speaking for yourself, you're giving a voice to all those who feel unheard. This is your chance to show the world who you truly are. As the night of the event arrived, Marcus stood backstage, the murmur of the crowd filtering through the curtains. He could hear the laughter and chatter, a stark contrast to the turmoil within him. Tanya, sensing his trepidation, placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've got this. Just speak from your heart." When it was finally his turn to step onto the stage, Marcus felt the weight of all those eyes upon him. The bright lights momentarily blinded him, but he focused on the faces in the audience. Many were familiar, others strangers, all united in a desire for change. He took a deep breath, grounding himself in the knowledge that he was not alone. As he began to speak, the words flowed out, raw and honest. He recounted the incident at the bank, detailing not just the humiliation, but the internal struggle that had followed. He spoke of the moments when he had felt invisible, the countless times he had been judged before even opening his mouth. With each word, he felt the tension begin to lift from his shoulders. The audience hung on to his every syllable, the atmosphere thick with empathy. However, as he delved deeper into his story, Marcus noticed a few faces in the crowd that shifted. From empathy to discomfort, he caught the eye of a man in a suit who seemed to bristle at the mention of his experience. The man's body language radiated defensiveness, a stark reminder of the very prejudices Marcus was trying to confront. In that moment, a wave of fear washed over him. Would his message fall on deaf ears? Would it be met with resistance instead of understanding? After his speech concluded, the applause felt both affirming and hollow. He had shared his truth, but the fear of backlash loomed large. As he stepped off the stage, he was met by Tanya's warm embrace, her pride radiating through her smile. But the earlier discomfort he had sensed in the audience nagged at him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had stirred something in those who were unwilling to confront their biases. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effects of his speech began to manifest. He received messages from people expressing gratitude for his courage, but he also faced backlash from those who felt threatened by the truth he had shared. One evening, he opened his front door to find a package left on his porch. Inside, he found a note filled with derogatory slurs, a stark reminder that his journey toward empowerment would not be without challenges. The anger and hurt surged through him, but he knew that this was part of the battle, a battle he was now more determined than ever to fight. Alan, having witnessed the backlash from afar, reached out to Marcus, reminding him of the importance of solidarity in the face of adversity. "You're not just a voice for yourself anymore, you're a symbol of resilience for many. We're in this together, and together we'll make sure your message is heard." With Alan's support, Marcus began to focus on the positive outcomes of his speech, engaging with community leaders and organizations that sought to create safe spaces for conversations about race and dignity. He found himself surrounded by individuals who shared his vision, a diverse coalition of allies who believed in the power of storytelling and the necessity of confronting uncomfortable truths. Each interaction deepened his resolve and made him realize that he was not alone in this fight. Yet just as he began to feel a sense of purpose, an unexpected challenge arose. A social media post intended to support him inadvertently sparked a heated debate about race relations that spiraled out of control. Comment threads filled with anger and division, and Marcus found himself at the center of a storm he had never anticipated. He watched in disbelief as the very allies who had rallied around him began to clash over differing opinions, each side entrenched in their beliefs. The emotional toll was profound. Marcus felt a sense of isolation creeping in as he struggled to navigate the complexities of activism and allyship. He'd always prided himself on being a unifier, yet here he was, a man caught in the crossfire of a conversation that had become increasingly divisive. The fear of losing support, of being misunderstood, weighed heavily on his heart. In this moment of crisis, Tanya stepped forward, her voice a steady anchor amidst the chaos. "Marcus, we can't control how people react, but we can control how we respond. Let's focus on the conversations that matter, the ones that foster understanding, rather than division. We need to create spaces where everyone can express their thoughts without fear of judgment." With Tanya's guidance, Marcus organized a community forum aimed at fostering open dialogues about race and respect. They invited individuals from all backgrounds to share their experiences and perspectives, emphasizing the importance of active listening and empathy. The event was met with skepticism from some, but Marcus was determined to create a space where healing could begin. As he stood before a diverse audience on the night of the forum, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The stakes were high, and the challenges were daunting, but he reminded himself of the strength that lay in vulnerability. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it was necessary. With each conversation, each shared story, he hoped to bridge the gaps that had long divided their community. In the midst of this transformative journey, Marcus found himself reflecting on his own beliefs and convictions. The initial moments of humiliation had shaken him to his core, but they had also ignited a fire within him, a desire to advocate for dignity and respect, not just for himself, but for all those who felt marginalized. This newfound clarity propelled him forward, fueling his commitment to the cause and solidifying his role as a leader within the community. As the forum unfolded, he witnessed the power of shared stories to dismantle prejudices and build connections. Vulnerability became a catalyst for change, transforming the atmosphere from one of tension to one of understanding. As he listened to others share their own experiences of humiliation and resilience, Marcus felt a profound sense of solidarity. Each story contributed to a tapestry of strength, weaving together a collective narrative that transcended individual struggles. In the end, the challenges he faced only deepened his resolve, and he emerged from the experience with a clearer vision of the work ahead. The journey toward dignity and respect was fraught with obstacles, but Marcus was no longer alone in the fight. With the support of allies like Alan and Tanya, he was ready to confront the complexities of change, armed with the knowledge that every voice mattered in the pursuit of justice. The weeks following the community forum were a blur of activity for Marcus, but the intensity of his mission was met with an equal measure of backlash. Just as he had begun to feel a sense of empowerment, a new wave of challenges emerged, threatening to unravel the progress he had made. The heated debates from the forum had caught the attention of local media, and soon, sensational headlines began to circulate. Local activist sparks division in community, and "Is Marcus Ellis a unifier or a divider?" took center stage, twisting his intentions into something unrecognizable. The emotional toll weighed heavily on him. Each morning, he would scroll through social media, bracing himself for the vitriol that awaited. He could almost predict the comments, accusations that he was inciting conflict, that he was playing the victim card, or worse, that he was simply trying to make a name for himself. The sting of these words was palpable, gnawing at his self-worth and leaving him feeling exposed. He began experiencing physical symptoms of his anxiety, sleepless nights, tension headaches, and a constant knot in his stomach. He was caught in a relentless cycle of fear and frustration, questioning whether his voice could truly make a difference or if it was merely a target for those unwilling to confront their biases. Alan, who had been a steadfast ally, noticed the change in Marcus. One evening, they met at a local cafe, the steam from their mugs filling the air between them. "You're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, Marcus," Alan said, his tone laced with concern. "You're not alone in this. We all believe in what you're doing." But Marcus felt isolated, a sentiment that deepened when he learned that some of his closest supporters had begun to waver. Tanya, his childhood friend and fellow activist, had been inundated with messages from her own circle, urging her to distance herself from Marcus. "They say I'm compromising my credibility by associating with you," she confessed one day, her voice tinged with frustration. "It feels like I'm being asked to choose between my friendships and my principles." The cracks in their friendship began to show, and Marcus could feel the distance growing. Their conversations shifted from shared dreams of activism to uncomfortable silences filled with unspoken tensions. He worried that the external pressures were corroding the foundation of their bond, forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths about their differing experiences and perspectives. The very thing that had brought them together, an understanding of each other's struggles, now seemed to threaten the trust that had been built over years. In the midst of this turmoil, a new challenge unexpectedly arose. A local organization reached out to Marcus, inviting him to collaborate on a campaign addressing systemic racism in the community. Initially, he felt a surge of hope. This was the kind of opportunity he had yearned for. However, as the details unfolded, he discovered that the organization had a controversial history, including ties to individuals who had been accused of perpetuating the very stereotypes he fought against. The dilemma weighed heavily on his conscience. Should he align himself with an organization that could potentially undermine his message in pursuit of broader visibility? As he wrestled with this decision, Marcus found himself reflecting on his own beliefs. The fear of being labeled a hypocrite gnawed at him, yet the desire to be part of something larger than himself tugged at his heart. He sought advice from Alan, who encouraged him to trust his instincts. "You have to be true to yourself, Marcus. If something doesn't feel right, don't compromise your values for the sake of visibility. Remember why you started this journey." Despite Alan's reassurance, Marcus felt a sense of impending failure creeping in. The fear of making the wrong choice paralyzed him, leaving him feeling as though he stood on the precipice of a major decision that could alter his path forever. It was a moment of deep doubt, one that threatened to push him toward giving up on his mission entirely. Just when it seemed that everything was spiraling out of control, an unforeseen event shook the foundation of the community. A high-profile incident of police brutality ignited protests across the nation, and the local chapter of the movement began to gain momentum. Marcus was suddenly thrust into a position of visibility again, but this time it was accompanied by a wave of overwhelming pressure. "This is your chance to lead," people urged him. "You need to speak out." The call to action felt like a double-edged sword. He was torn between the need to rise to the occasion and the fear of further backlash. In the midst of this chaos, Tanya reached out to Marcus, extending an olive branch. "I want to help, but we need to address the elephant in the room. We can't let the pressures of the outside world dictate our friendship. We need to be honest with each other about how we feel and how this is affecting us." Their conversation was raw and emotional, a cathartic release of pent-up frustrations and fears. Tanya spoke of her own struggles with identity and acceptance, and Marcus shared his feelings of inadequacy and isolation. As they opened up, the distance between them began to close, and they rekindled their commitment to each other and to the cause they had once shared so passionately. With renewed determination, Marcus decided to move forward with the protests, but this time with a clear focus on fostering unity rather than division. He reached out to other activists in the community, emphasizing the need for collaboration and dialogue. The emotional roller coaster had transformed him. He was no longer just an individual reacting to the world around him. He was becoming a catalyst for change, willing to confront his fears and embrace the complexities of advocacy. However, as the protests gained traction, Marcus was met with increasing hostility from those resistant to change. One evening, as he prepared for a rally, he received a threatening message that sent shivers down his spine. The anonymous sender warned him to back down or face dire consequences. His heart raced as he contemplated the implications of standing up for what he believed in. Would the fight for dignity and respect cost him more than he was willing to pay? In the days that followed, Marcus felt the weight of this threat looming over him. The pressure was suffocating, and the emotional toll began to manifest physically. He found himself withdrawing from social interactions, choosing solitude over the camaraderie he once cherished. His relationships with Alan and Tanya became strained as he grappled with fear and uncertainty, pushing away those who cared about him the most. Yet, in this darkest hour, a flicker of resilience ignited within him. The very act of being threatened solidified his purpose, forcing him to confront the reality of his situation. He could either succumb to fear or rise above it, using the experience to fuel his advocacy. With a newfound resolve, he reached out to his community, organizing a solidarity march to demonstrate that they would not be silenced by intimidation. As Marcus prepared to take the stage once more, he felt a surge of determination wash over him. He was not just fighting for himself, he was fighting for every individual who had felt the sting of prejudice and oppression. The path toward change was littered with obstacles, but he was no longer alone in navigating them. With Tanya and Alan by his side, he stepped into the light, ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that change was never easy, but always necessary. As the day of the Solidarity March approached, Marcus felt his heart racing with a mix of anticipation and dread. The air was thick with tension, and the threat he had received lingered like a shadow over him. He understood that this event could be a turning point, not just for him, but for the entire community. It was an opportunity to unify voices, to drown out the fear-mongering that sought to silence them. Yet the stakes felt higher than ever. On the morning of the march, a storm brewed in the sky, dark clouds gathering ominously above. As he stood at the front of the gathering crowd, he watched as people began to filter into the park, their faces a mosaic of determination and hope. Each step they took toward him filled him with a sense of purpose, yet the oppressive weight of anxiety threatened to crush him. His palms were clammy, and he could feel the knot in his stomach tighten with every passing moment. Just as he was about to take the stage, a sudden commotion erupted at the edge of the crowd. A group of counter-protesters had shown up, brandishing signs with incendiary slogans and shouting derogatory remarks. The atmosphere shifted instantly, and chaos ensued. Marcus felt a rush of adrenaline as he watched them approach, their hostility palpable. The crowd began to murmur nervously, and he could sense the fear rising among his supporters. At that moment, Marcus was faced with a choice that felt monumental. He could retreat, allow fear to dictate his actions, or he could confront the adversity head-on. In a split second, he made his decision. He stepped forward, raising his hands to silence the crowd. "We will not be intimidated," he shouted, his voice echoing across the park. Today, we stand for unity. We stand for justice. We stand together. The words poured out of him, fueled by a mixture of desperation and resolve. He felt the energy of the crowd shift as they began to chant in response. The sound rippled through him, awakening something deep within. For the first time, he realized that his fear could be transformed into strength. The sight of his supporters rallying around him ignited a fire he didn't know he possessed. In that critical moment, something changed within Marcus. The emotional weight of the previous weeks, the fear, the doubt, the isolation, began to lift. He recognized that he was not just fighting for himself, he was part of a larger narrative, a movement that transcended his individual struggles. As the chants grew louder, he felt a sense of liberation wash over him. The solidarity of the community fortified him against the wave of hostility. However, the counter-protesters were undeterred. Their shouts grew louder, and the tension in the air became almost unbearable. Suddenly, a scuffle broke out between the opposing groups. Marcus's heart sank as he watched chaos unfold before him. His supporters clashed with those who sought to undermine their message. Panic surged through the crowd, and Marcus felt a deep sense of helplessness. This was not the unity he had envisioned. As he witnessed the violence erupt, a painful realization washed over him. His mission had always been about creating dialogue, about fostering understanding, yet here they were, embroiled in conflict. The emotional toll of witnessing this chaos weighed heavily on him, forcing him to confront the reality that change was not as simple as he had once believed. The fight for justice was multifaceted, riddled with complexities that demanded more than just passion. It required strategy and thoughtful engagement. In that moment of reflection, he took a deep breath, grounding himself. He realized that he had to pivot his approach if he wanted to make a lasting impact. Rather than matching hostility with hostility, he needed to find a way to reach across the divide. He called for calm, urging his supporters to focus on their message rather than the provocation of the counter-protesters. "Let's show them our strength through peace," he urged, his voice resonating with conviction. Slowly, the crowd began to respond. They chanted words of hope, drowning out the anger surrounding them. The energy shifted once more, transforming from one of fear to one of resilience. Marcus felt a renewed sense of clarity. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The chaos had illuminated the need for a more nuanced approach, one that prioritized dialogue and understanding over confrontation. The march resumed its course, and as they moved together, Marcus felt empowered by a newfound vision. He began to reframe his mission. It wasn't just about protest. It was about building bridges, creating spaces for conversation, and challenging the narratives that perpetuated division. With each step forward, he felt the weight of his past doubts lifting, replaced by a sense of purpose that felt almost palpable. As the march concluded, he stood before the crowd once more, this time with a message that echoed the lessons he had learned. Today, we have shown that we can unite in the face of adversity. But this is just the beginning. We must engage, listen, and create pathways for understanding. Our fight is not just against hate, it is for love, for acceptance, and for the future we wish to build together. The crowd erupted in applause, and Marcus felt a surge of hope. The solidarity he had envisioned was no longer a distant dream, it was unfolding before him in real time. The challenges ahead were undoubtedly significant, but he now understood that each obstacle was an opportunity for growth and connection. In the aftermath of the march, as the dust settled and the community began to reflect on the day's events, Marcus found himself at a crossroads. He could have easily succumbed to despair, allowing the threats and hostility to dictate his actions. Instead, he chose to embrace the complexities of advocacy, recognizing that true change required not just courage, but also compassion and understanding. The transformative event had redefined his perspective and goals, igniting a passion within him to forge connections rather than only confront conflict. With Tanya and Alan by his side, he began strategizing new initiatives that focused on community dialogues, workshops, and collaborative projects aimed at bridging gaps. As he looked toward the future, he felt an undeniable sense of anticipation. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but he was no longer alone. Together, they would confront the divisions that had long plagued their community. Marcus had stepped into his role as a leader, not through the absence of fear, but through the recognition of its power to inspire action and change. This was merely the beginning. The turning point had set the stage for something greater. The fight for justice was now intertwined with the pursuit of understanding, and Marcus was ready to embrace the complexities of the journey ahead, armed with a renewed sense of purpose and an unwavering commitment to the cause he held dear. As the weeks passed after the march, Marcus found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The initial surge of hope had been tempered by the reality of ongoing threats and the palpable tension that lingered in the community. He had witnessed firsthand how the fight for justice was rarely a clean path. It was a labyrinth of complexities, with new challenges surfacing at every turn. The counter-protesters had not retreated quietly. Their presence loomed like a storm cloud, and rumors of further confrontations circulated in the streets. In preparation for the upcoming town hall meeting, Marcus felt a mix of determination and anxiety. This meeting would serve as a platform for dialogue, a chance to address community concerns and strategize for the future. Yet, the fear of backlash weighed heavily on him. He stood in front of the mirror, practicing his speech, trying to convince himself that he was ready. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted his tie, a physical manifestation of the doubts swirling in his mind. "Focus," he whispered to himself. "This is about more than just you." His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was Tanya, her message a reminder of their shared resolve. "We've got your back, Marcus. Let's show them what we can do together." The words brought him a moment of solace, but as he prepared to leave, another message came through, an anonymous threat echoing the hostility of the past. The words were chilling, igniting the fear he had fought to banish. He took a deep breath, trying to quell the rising tide of panic. At the meeting, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation, but he could feel the undercurrents of tension. Allies and adversaries filled the room, each with their own agendas. Tanya and Alan took their places beside him, their expressions a mix of support and concern. Their steadfast presence reminded him that he was not alone in this fight. As they strategized, Marcus felt the weight of leadership settle on his shoulders. Tanya, her voice steady and resolute, spoke about the importance of inclusivity in their approach. "We can't just confront the hate, we need to invite those who disagree to the table. It's about building bridges, not walls." Her words resonated with the group, igniting a renewed sense of purpose. Alan nodded in agreement, emphasizing the need to listen to the community's fears and concerns. Yet, as the evening wore on, Marcus couldn't shake the notion that something was amiss. He could feel the tension rising, the palpable fear that the counter-protesters would disrupt their efforts yet again. Just as he was about to voice his concerns, a loud crash echoed from outside the building. The room fell silent, and a collective anxiety gripped everyone. What was that? Someone whispered, eyes wide with fear. Marcus felt the familiar knot tighten in his stomach. It was a reminder that they were still in a volatile situation, and their efforts could be met with violent resistance. He exchanged glances with Tanya and Alan, silently assessing the gravity of the moment. They needed to act, to confront whatever was brewing outside, but there was a lingering doubt in his heart. As they stepped outside, the scene was chaotic. A group of protesters had gathered, their signs raised high, chanting slogans that echoed with anger and hostility. The atmosphere crackled with tension, and Marcus could sense the fear rising among his supporters. It was a visceral reminder of the stakes, and he was acutely aware that this confrontation could determine the future of their movement. In that moment, a flicker of doubt crept into Marcus's mind. What if they were not ready? What if their efforts for dialogue were met with violence? He looked at Tanya and Alan, who stood resolute despite the chaos around them. They had faced their own fears, and their presence reminded him of the strength they had cultivated together. Before he could voice his concerns, a voice pierced through the tumult. It was a young woman standing at the front of the crowd, her face a mask of determination. "We need to stand together. We need to show them that we won't back down." Her words resonated with the crowd, igniting a spark of unity amidst the chaos. Marcus felt a wave of inspiration wash over him. This young woman, a stranger to him, embodied the spirit of resilience they had fought to cultivate. It was a reminder that the movement was larger than any one individual. It was a collective force of diverse voices united for a common cause. With renewed determination, Marcus stepped forward, raising his hands to address the crowd. "We are here to stand for justice, to create a space for dialogue, not conflict. Let's channel our energy into something positive." His voice rang with conviction, and he could see the tension in the crowd begin to shift. As the chants of unity began to swell, Marcus caught sight of Tanya and Alan, their expressions reflecting a mix of pride and hope. They had weathered the storm together, facing their fears and doubts head-on. In that moment, he understood that they were not just allies, they were a family bound by a shared vision. But just as the atmosphere began to shift, a sudden commotion erupted from the back of the crowd. A group of counter-protesters surged forward, their intentions clear as they clashed with Marcus's supporters. The chaos erupted once more, and Marcus felt a surge of panic as he watched the violence unfold. "Stay together, don't let them divide us," he shouted, but the words felt inadequate amidst the chaos. Just when it seemed that the situation would spiral out of control, a familiar face emerged from the crowd. It was a local business owner, someone who had previously stood aloof from the movement. With a firm voice, he called for calm, urging both sides to step back and consider the consequences of their actions. The unexpected appearance of this ally shifted the dynamics of the confrontation. The crowd hesitated, and in that moment, Marcus seized the opportunity. "This is our chance to show that we can rise above the hate. Let's not give in to fear." His voice echoed through the crowd, and he felt the power of unity reignite. As the tension began to dissipate, Marcus realized that this was not just about the march or the town hall meeting. It was about the ongoing struggle for justice and the unexpected alliances that could emerge from the chaos. The lesson was clear. They could face their fears and unite in the face of adversity, transforming the very narrative that sought to divide them. In the days that followed, as they prepared for the final confrontation at the town hall, Marcus found himself reflecting on the journey. The threats, the chaos, and the unexpected allies had shaped him in ways he never anticipated. He understood now that true strength came from vulnerability, from acknowledging their fears while choosing to stand together. As the day of the town hall meeting approached, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. He had gathered his thoughts, his allies, and his resolve. This was more than just a meeting, it was an opportunity to challenge the status quo and advocate for a future where understanding triumphed over fear. With Tanya and Alan by his side, he stepped into the venue, ready to face whatever lay ahead. They had transformed their doubts into a collective strength, and as they took their places in front of the crowd, Marcus felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. This was the moment he had been waiting for, and he was ready to confront the challenges before him, armed with courage, compassion, and the unwavering support of his community. As the town hall meeting commenced, the atmosphere crackled with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Marcus stood at the forefront, flanked by Tanya and Alan, each of them embodying a different aspect of the community's resolve. The room was packed, a sea of faces reflecting a myriad of emotions: hope, fear, skepticism, and determination. Marcus could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on him, a reminder that this was not merely about words, but about action, impact, and the future they sought to create. The town hall was meant to be a space for dialogue, but as the meeting unfolded, it became clear that the opposing factions had come prepared for conflict. The air was thick with tension, and Marcus could see the counter-protesters, their presence, a stark reminder of the division still looming over the community. They were positioned strategically, their hostile energy palpable, ready to disrupt any semblance of peace. As Marcus began to speak, he was acutely aware of the glares and jeers from the opposing side. "We're here today to engage in a conversation about justice, about building a community that values every voice," he asserted, his voice steady despite the chaos. But the counter-protesters erupted, drowning him out with chants that incited fear and anger. "You don't belong here!" one shouted, a sentiment echoed by others. In that moment, Marcus felt the familiar knot of doubt tighten in his stomach. The room was divided, and the stakes had never been higher. The voices of dissent echoed in his mind, threatening to unravel the progress they had made. Yet, as he looked at Tanya, his unwavering anchor, he remembered the lessons learned throughout this journey: the importance of unity, the power of dialogue, the necessity of courage in the face of adversity. "Please," he implored, raising his voice above the din, "this is not about us versus them. This is about all of us, and the future we want to build together." The room fell silent for a heartbeat, his words hanging in the air. It was a glimmer of hope, but it was quickly overshadowed by a new wave of hostility. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the back of the room, a woman, her expression fierce and unwavering. "We've tried to reason with you," she shouted at the counter-protesters. "You think your hate will silence us? We are stronger than your fear." Her voice resonated, igniting a spark among Marcus's supporters. Fueled by her courage, Marcus felt a surge of determination. He stepped forward, heart racing, and called out to the crowd, "What do we want? A community that embraces diversity, that stands against hate." The response was immediate, a chorus of voices rising in unison, echoing his words back to him. But just as the momentum began to shift, the counter-protesters surged forward, their ire igniting the room once more. Fear washed over Marcus as he realized that the situation was about to erupt into chaos. The crowd began to push and jostle, and he could see the fear in the eyes of those who had come to support change. In that pivotal moment, Marcus faced his greatest challenge, not just the external conflict with the counter-protesters, but the internal battle against his own fear. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, each beat a reminder of the stakes. Would he allow fear to dictate the outcome, or would he stand firm in his resolve? With a deep breath, he recalled Tanya's words about building bridges, not walls. "We cannot let fear divide us," he shouted, grounding himself in the belief that unity was their greatest weapon. "We have come too far to let hatred win." His voice rang with conviction, and he felt the energy shift as those around him began to rally. Tanya stepped forward beside him, her presence a beacon of strength. "This is our moment. We have the power to choose how we respond. Let's show them that love and understanding can triumph over fear." Her voice cut through the chaos, and the crowd responded, their chants transforming from anger to solidarity, a powerful display of resilience. As the counter-protesters pressed closer, Marcus made a choice. He turned to his supporters, his heart swelling with gratitude and resolve. "Stand firm. We will not be intimidated. We are here for justice, for each other, and for our community. Let's show them what it means to stand united." With that declaration, a wave of courage swept through the room. The supporters, emboldened by Marcus's words, formed a protective line, standing together against the encroaching hostility. It was a moment of clarity, a realization that they were more than just individuals. They were a collective force, unified in purpose. As the tension reached its peak, Marcus and his allies stood resolute, embodying the very essence of their movement. The power of their shared conviction became a shield, deflecting the hostility that threatened to engulf them. The counter-protesters hesitated, caught off guard by the unwavering strength of their adversaries. In those crucial moments, Marcus understood that the battle was not merely against the opposing faction, it was a fight against the fear that sought to divide them. This realization transformed the atmosphere, and as the chants of unity grew louder, the tide began to shift. The counter-protesters, faced with the overwhelming solidarity of the crowd, began to falter. Suddenly, a shout rang out from the back, a voice filled with anguish. "This isn't what we want. We want to be heard, not to fight." It was a counter-protester, visibly shaken, and her words pierced through the hostility. Silence fell over the room, the raw honesty of her plea resonating with many. In that instant, Marcus seized the opportunity. "Let's listen. Let's talk. We are all part of this community, and we need to hear each other." His voice, steady and filled with compassion, reached out to the woman, inviting her to join them. The crowd held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. As she stepped forward, the tension in the room began to dissolve. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. This was the moment they had been striving for, a chance to break through the barriers of anger and misunderstanding. With each passing second, he could sense the shift towards healing, towards unity. The counter-protesters, witnessing this transformation, began to retreat, their resolve crumbling in the face of an unexpected dialogue. What had begun as a confrontation evolved into a conversation, and Marcus realized that they had turned the tide, not through aggression, but through vulnerability and openness. As the meeting drew to a close, the emotional impact was palpable. Marcus felt a profound sense of connection with those around him, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there was hope for understanding. The lessons learned throughout. Their journey had culminated in this critical moment, redefining not only their community, but also their individual selves. In the aftermath, as the crowd dispersed, Marcus felt a surge of gratitude towards Tanya and Alan. Their unwavering support had been instrumental in overcoming the greatest challenge they had faced. The bonds forged in the heat of conflict had transformed into a powerful alliance, solidifying their shared commitment to justice and understanding. As they walked away from the town hall, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but together they had proven that even in the face of adversity, love and unity could prevail. He looked at his friends, their faces illuminated with hope, and he knew that they were ready to continue the fight, not just for themselves, but for the community they cherished and envisioned. As the crowd began to disperse, the energy in the town hall shifted from one of confrontation to a cautious optimism. Marcus stood amidst the remnants of the gathering, the echoes of their chant still reverberating in his mind. He felt an overwhelming sense of relief wash over him. But beneath that, an undercurrent of anxiety stirred. This was a pivotal moment, but the journey was far from over. Tanya and Alan approached him, their faces glowing with a mixture of pride and disbelief. "We did it," Tanya said, her voice filled with emotion. "We actually turned the tide." Marcus nodded, but as he met her gaze, he could see the flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. He realized that while they had achieved a significant breakthrough, the real work was only just beginning. In the days that followed, the impact of their actions rippled through the community. Local news outlets covered the town hall meeting extensively, framing it as a turning point in the ongoing struggle for justice and unity. Marcus found himself at the center of a newfound dialogue, his voice echoed in articles and social media posts. He felt a swell of pride at being part of something larger than himself, yet the weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders like a heavy mantle. As he walked through the town, he noticed a shift in the way people interacted. Strangers greeted him with nods of acknowledgement, and conversations that once felt charged with tension now held a tentative openness. He and his allies began organizing community workshops focused on dialogue and understanding, aiming to bridge the divides that had long plagued their town. Yet, not everyone was ready to embrace this change. The counter-protesters, though, diminished, still lingered on the fringes, their anger simmering beneath the surface. Marcus often found himself on the receiving end of their scorn, and at times the vitriol stung. But he also learned to recognize the pain behind their aggression, understanding that fear often masqueraded as hostility. One afternoon, as he prepared for another workshop, Marcus reflected on how far he had come. He recalled his initial hesitations, the moments of doubt that had nearly consumed him in the town hall meeting. He recognized that the fear he once felt had transformed into a fierce determination. He had learned that leadership was not merely about having answers, but about fostering an environment where questions could be raised and voices could be heard. He thought about Tanya, whose strength and passion had inspired him throughout this journey. She had taken on a mentorship role, guiding others in their community who had felt silenced. Her empowerment had become a beacon for many women in the town, encouraging them to step into their own power. They had formed a coalition of women who were now actively participating in local governance, advocating for policies that uplifted marginalized voices. Alan, too, had experienced a transformation. Initially reluctant to engage in the fray, he had become a vital strategist, helping to organize peaceful demonstrations and dialogues with the opposing side. His analytical mind and empathetic heart had proved invaluable. Marcus admired how Alan had found his voice, learning to navigate the complexities of social justice with both intellect and compassion. As they gathered for one of their workshops, Marcus felt a profound sense of purpose. The room buzzed with anticipation as community members arrived, ready to engage in conversations that had once seemed impossible. He took a moment to look around, absorbing the diversity of faces, young and old, from various backgrounds, all eager to participate in this collective healing. Today, we're here to listen and learn. Marcus began, his voice steady and calm. We've made strides, but there's still so much work to do. Let's create a safe space for everyone to share their perspectives. Remember, our differences are what make us strong. As the discussions unfolded, Marcus witnessed the power of vulnerability. People shared their stories, painful experiences of exclusion, moments of prejudice, and the longing for understanding. Each voice was met with empathy, and the walls that had once divided them began to dissolve. In those moments, Marcus found clarity. He realized that while they had made significant progress, true change required ongoing effort and commitment. The journey of building a united community was not a destination, but a continuous evolution, demanding patience, compassion, and resilience. As weeks turned into months, the workshops became a staple of community life, fostering connections that transcended old animosities. The town began to transform, slowly but surely. New initiatives emerged, highlighting local artists, supporting small businesses, and celebrating cultural diversity. Marcus felt pride swell in his chest. Change was happening, and they were driving it together. One evening, after a particularly impactful workshop, Tanya pulled him aside. "You've become a real leader, Marcus. I hope you know how much you've impacted this community." Her words warmed him, filling him with a sense of accomplishment. Yet with that compliment came an awareness of the responsibility he carried. "Thank you, Tanya, but it's not just me. We're all in this together. I couldn't have done any of this without you and Alan," he replied, emphasizing the collective effort. As they stood in the glow of the streetlights, Marcus couldn't help but reflect on his journey. He had faced fear, doubt, and conflict, but through it all he had discovered the power of empathy and connection. He had learned that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a strength, and that true leadership lay in service to others. In the months that followed, celebrations of diversity became more commonplace in their town. Festivals honoring different cultures, art installations reflecting their shared history, and public forums for open dialogue became emblematic of their progress. The counter-protesters had not disappeared, but the community's resolve had grown stronger in the face of adversity. Marcus knew that the path ahead would not be without challenges. There would always be those who resisted change. But he also understood that the foundation they had built was resilient. They had created a space where dialogue took precedence over division, and that was a victory in itself. As he looked toward the horizon, Marcus felt a renewed sense of hope. He envisioned a future where understanding and compassion reigned, where every voice mattered, and where their community could thrive together. In that moment of contemplation, he knew he had not only transformed the town, but had also undergone a profound personal metamorphosis. He had emerged not just as a leader, but as a bridge builder, someone who could navigate the complexities of human connection with grace and compassion. With each step forward, he carried with him the lessons learned, the importance of listening, the power of vulnerability, and the unwavering belief that love could triumph over fear. As he walked home that evening, the stars twinkling above him, Marcus felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought him here. He had discovered not only the strength of his community, but the strength within himself, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the transformative power of unity. As the weeks passed, the town continued to transform, and Marcus felt the weight of responsibility shift from his shoulders, replaced with a sense of hope and purpose. The workshops had become a lifeline for many, a place where people could gather to share stories, confront their biases, and build bridges. The once divided town was starting to feel like a community, alive with conversation, laughter, and a shared vision for a better future. On a bright Saturday morning, the town held its first Unity Festival, a celebration to honor the progress they had made. Vibrant banners hung across the streets, and the air was filled with the aroma of food from various cultural backgrounds, each dish representing a piece of the town's diverse tapestry. Marcus stood at the entrance, welcoming attendees with a smile, feeling a swell of pride as he watched families mingle, children play, and neighbors embrace. Tanya was busy organizing a panel discussion featuring voices from different backgrounds, and Alan was setting up booths for local artists. The three of them, once merely friends united by circumstance, had become comrades in a shared mission. They had forged an unexpected but unbreakable bond, each contributing their strengths to create something meaningful. As the festival unfolded, Marcus took a moment to step aside, observing the joyful chaos around him. He felt a sense of gratitude wash over him. This was the culmination of their hard work, people from all walks of life coming together, not just to celebrate their differences, but to embrace them. He thought back to the fear and doubt that had once clouded his mind and realized how far they had all come. The panel discussion kicked off with Tanya, her passion shining through as she spoke about the importance of representation and empowerment. She shared her journey, how she had transformed from a hesitant participant to a confident leader. Alan followed, discussing the strategies they had implemented to foster dialogue and understanding, emphasizing the need for continued efforts in the face of resistance. The crowd listened intently, and Marcus felt a sense of belonging, knowing that their stories resonated with others. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the festivities, Marcus took the stage for a closing address. He looked out at the sea of faces, familiar and new, who had come together, and he felt a profound connection to each one of them. Today, we celebrate not just our differences, but the courage it takes to embrace them, he began, his voice steady. We've made great strides, but let's not forget that this is just the beginning. Our journey doesn't end here. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. Each of us has the power to create change, whether it's in our homes, schools, workplaces, or within our hearts. We can be the change we wish to see in the world. The crowd erupted in applause, and Marcus felt a rush of gratitude. This was more than a celebration. It was a movement, a testament to the strength of community and the power of collective action. As he stepped down, he was enveloped in hugs from people he had only recently met, each expressing their appreciation for his leadership and vision. In the days that followed, the momentum of the festival continued to build. New initiatives sprouted from the workshops, including mentorship programs for youth, art projects that highlighted the town's history, and community dialogues that encouraged ongoing conversations about inclusion and equity. Marcus, Tanya, and Alan worked tirelessly to ensure that the changes were not fleeting, but ingrained in the fabric of their community. Reflecting on the journey, Marcus recognized that while the festival marked a significant milestone, the path ahead was filled with possibilities. He envisioned a future where their town could serve as a model for other communities, a beacon of hope and resilience. He felt invigorated by the thought of what they could achieve together. More workshops, more outreach, and perhaps even partnerships with neighboring towns to share their story. One evening, as he walked home under a sky full of stars, Marcus felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had learned that change does not happen overnight. It requires dedication, empathy, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. He thought of the challenges they had faced, the voices that had been silenced, and the progress they had made. Through it all, he had discovered not just the leader within himself, but the strength found in vulnerability and connection. As he reached his front porch, he paused for a moment, taking in the quiet of the night. He knew that their struggle was ongoing, but he felt ready for whatever lay ahead. The lessons learned and the bonds forged would carry him forward, fueling his passion for justice and unity. In that moment of reflection, Marcus understood the core message of his journey. Change begins with understanding and compassion. It starts with listening and, above all, believing in the power of community. As he stepped inside, he was filled with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to continue the work that lay before him. The festival had not just been a celebration, it had been a reminder that together they could overcome any obstacle. As Marcus turned off the lights and settled into bed, he felt a profound peace wash over him. He was not just a participant in this movement, he was a catalyst for change, and he was prepared to face whatever challenges awaited him. In the end, it was the journey that united them, a journey that had transformed not only their town, but also their lives. And as he drifted off to sleep, he knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful new chapter, one filled with hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief that together they could build a brighter future. And in the heart of that town, they had found not only their voices, but also a shared destiny, one that celebrated their differences while fostering a profound sense of belonging. It was a story not just of struggle, but of triumph, and a reminder that change is possible when we come together with open hearts and minds. In the years to come, Marcus would look back on this time as a turning point in his life, one marked by courage, friendship, and the unyielding belief in the power of community. And as he shared his story with others, he hoped to inspire them to embark on their own journeys of connection and transformation, reminding them that every voice matters and that together they could create a world filled with understanding and compassion. The stars continued to shine brightly above, a symbol of the endless possibilities that lay ahead, waiting for those brave enough to dream and act. And in that dream, Marcus found his place, his purpose, and the promise of a united future.